we have the question, will nationalism trump globalism? You know, there's a lot of excitement right now. A lot of people who are not big fans of globalism are kind of getting excited. And they're talking about the globalists finally being defeated, and we're going to get rid of that globalism, and we're going to have a nationalistic resurgence. Well, the question is this really going to happen? Is nationalism going to trump globalism? Are we seeing the end of globalism? And what does this have to do with the scriptures? Well, of course, the big thing that happened this last week was the Brexit referendum of the UK voting to leave the European Union. Now, here are the final results. About 52% of the voters chose to leave, over 48% that chose to remain. So as you can see, although those who voted leave were in the majority, it's not a big majority. It's not even 5% difference. But nevertheless, it's enough. It's enough in order for the UK to leave the EU. And there was a big celebration for those that wanted out of the EU. There was celebration in the streets from those people. Nigel Farage, I love his name. You know, what a clever guy. I don't know if you've ever got a chance to listen to him talking about the EU, but he's very witty in his opposition to it, been opposed to it for a long time. He said that this vote was a victory for ordinary people, and he called it an Independence Day. And he said, we've got our country back thanks to all of you, meaning all of those that voted to leave the EU. And they weren't the only ones celebrating. There were what were called far-right groups. You might call them simply reasonable groups in places across Europe who saw this as the beginning of a wave of exits from the EU and celebrating this event. They call it Brexit fever. France, Italy, Netherlands, Denmark, and perhaps more countries are seeking a vote on leaving the EU. So this is a pretty major thing that's going on in Europe. There's quite a lot of nationalist sentiment. But in America, we've got something very similar going on. In fact, the rhetoric is very similar for Brexit, as we hear from Donald Trump here in America. He also celebrated the Brexit vote, saying that the people in the UK have voted to reassert control over their own politics, borders, and economy. And he said that come November, the American people will have the chance to reject today's rule by the global elite. And that's what Donald Trump sees this about, rejecting the rulership of the global elite and taking the rulership back by the people. And amazingly, there's somebody that agrees with him that you wouldn't expect. This guy. President Obama. You'd never expect him to be agreeing with Donald Trump on anything, would you? But he said, I do think that yesterday's vote speaks to the ongoing changes and challenges that are raised by globalism. So they seem to agree that globalism is really the central thing that is driving this nationalistic move. So we wonder, what is it about globalism that's causing that? Why is this nationalistic backlash against globalism happening, and especially happening now? Well, I find it interesting that some of the very things that I've been talking about in various messages are now coming to the fore once again as really a catalyst for these latest events. For example, this cartoon illustrates for us a trend that we've been following, a trend of the super rich, and how so much of the wealth is flowing upward to the super rich. It's represented here as a pie. The wealthy are getting the pie, the middle class get one piece out of the whole pie, and the poor get a few berries. And that's about how it's working. We have looked at the figures in the past, and it's astounding. As a matter of fact, we found that less than 80 individuals have more wealth than half of the world population. So really, the picture is no exaggeration. And of course, with so much wealth going to so few people, pushback against that is inevitable at some point. Well, there's another issue that has pushed this over the tipping point, and that is the migrant chaos in Europe. This has just been a nightmare throughout Europe, including in the United Kingdom. It's brought along with it incredible, absolutely incredible chaos to the people. It's brought crime with it and just causing unrest across Europe. Along with the problems of so many migrants, there's also this problem, Islamic violence. And we've been seeing it. We've been seeing terrorist incidents across Europe, in Brussels, in France. We've seen some of it jump the pond and come over here to the United States as well. And while the ruling class continues to tell us, don't be prejudiced against the Muslims, the working class is thinking, we don't want these people killing us. We don't want them abusing our women, which a lot of that is happening. So this has been a very emotional impetus towards this nationalistic movement and against globalism. Then there's just the fact that the corporate elite seem to have a free pass. That the working class people, they pay all the bills, all the rules apply to them, while the corporate elite actually own and control the politicians. They get everything they want, everything is for them, and a lot of people are just fed up with that. So when you look at all of this, and you can see that some move against globalism is justified on the part of the people. Have we finally had it with globalism? Is globalism over now? Actually, no. This nationalistic move actually brings us even closer to world government than we've ever been. Now, you might think, that sounds strange. However, maybe you're not thinking about the Hegelian dialectic. You know, we go through this all the time. Left, right, left, right. We get a president on the right, pushes through all the agenda of the conservatives. Then we get a president on the left who pushes through their social agenda. Everybody gets sick of that. Goes back to the right again. And on we have gone. And with each step, we find ourselves getting closer to world government. And it seems like whether the left or the right is in control, globalism keeps growing. That is what has been happening. This is because this Hegelian dialectic is the elite framework for guiding our thoughts and our actions into conflicts that lead us to a predetermined solution. What happens is there's a thesis. That's the big idea, the thesis. And a lot of people are for it, they push it forward. But then there's opposition that forms against that idea. And that opposition pushes back, bringing things to a new position called a synthesis between the two positions. And it actually moves ahead the thesis. That's what happens. It's like taking 3 steps forward and 1 step back. And then 3 more steps forward and 1 step back. That's kind of how it works, so that the net movement is forward. Take a look at this as an example. This is how Hegelian dialectic control operates. There's the idea that gets put out there. Now realize the elite control the media. They own it, okay? All of the highly paid news figures you see on TV, who is paying their salary? It's the owners, the globalist elite that pays their salary. So the message that comes through in the media is controlled by the globalists. And then, of course, we have the political arena. And we vote people in and out of office. So we think. But what we have seen is that the votes of the people are not what actually controls what the politicians do. It's the support they get. It's the big donors that donate to their campaigns. Those donations make them rich, but they owe those people that are supporting them. So the global elite own the politicians and the political machinery. So if they own the media and they own the whole political apparatus, they are the ones that can control the dialectic. In other words, the conversation. They can frame the conversation the way they want it in order to move things forward according to their goals. So that's what they do. And all of a sudden, you'll notice in the media, everything is about a certain topic. And that's what gets put forward. But then there's always an argument on the other side. And that is framed against what is initially put forward. And then out of that comes something new. And that keeps happening over and over and over again. And that has brought us from a situation, for instance, just looking at one area, the social area, okay? That has brought us from a place where in this country, deviant sexual behavior, for example, was against the law in every state. Now the people that practice that kind of behavior actually have special rights in our country. How could that happen? The answer is the Hegelian dialectic is how that could happen. There's so many other areas we could look at where they have accomplished the same thing using this method. And what this process is about is bringing the whole world forward to the ultimate goal of the globalists, and that is global government. That's where they want to take us, because when they get us in one global government, then they totally have control of us. And then they don't just have to persuade us anymore like they do now. Then they can just control our lives. And it's going to be so much easier for them. So this is what they want to have happen. And this is what the Hegelian dialectic is really all about. And look at how far they brought that already. Well, Marine Le Pen says it's no longer left versus right, but nationalism versus globalism. When you look at this in terms of the Hegelian dialectic, what is this telling you? It's not left against right anymore. We're past that now. That's what it's been for decades, right? For many decades. Now we're past that. Take Donald Trump, for example. Even the evangelical Christians favor him. And yet, as far as the social issues, he really is closer to the left than he is to the right. But that's not the big issue right now, is it? The thing about Donald Trump is he stands for nationalism. And really the others all stand for globalism. We have here some of the differences between nationalism and globalism. Nationalism exerts controlled borders. To have a country, you've got to control who comes in and out of your country. Globalism says no borders. People should just be able to go wherever they want. Nationalism says controlled trade borders. Now, the buzz term for the globalists is free trade. They want no trade borders. In other words, free trade. The reason for this is the supranational corporations don't want to have to stay in a country like America, where the wages are higher and where it costs them more. They want to just be able to cross any border, go wherever it's cheapest for them to produce things, even if they leave lots and lots of their workers behind without jobs. So that favors the globalists. But they have this ideology about free trade. A lot of people buy into that who are not globalists. They just believe what they're told. Donald Trump, for example, he says, we're done with that. We have to have controlled trade borders. We have to have good deals in order to protect our country. Nationalism says what's best is distinct nation states. Countries should have their own identity. They should have control over their own country, their own nation. Globalists say what's best. We have one world, so what we need is one super state to govern it all. The nationalists then say, yes, but each country has its unique culture. And that's tradition of each country, and that should be preserved for the people. But the globalists say, that's all the past. Now we're moving into a time where there's going to be one big global culture. Everybody has to blend into that. The world monoculture. These are the two ideas, nationalism and globalism. And these now are the opposing thesis and antithesis. No longer left and right. No longer liberalism and conservatism. Now nationalism and globalism have taken over. That shows you how far the Hegelian dialectic has actually progressed. We've had a lot of progress for the globalists in the things they want. Things like the EU. bringing all of Europe under one control that's not democratic. For instance, with the recent migrant crisis, individual countries are not able to make a choice for their country whether they want to have more migrants. Under the EU, they all just have to accept them. NAFTA, where in America a lot of the industry has moved south into Mexico. All tariffs and so on have been removed, and a lot of jobs have moved south as well. And globalist trade deals, all kinds of globalist trade deals that have taken jobs away from the West, the United States, away from the EU, away from the UK, to other countries. And what happens here is the technology that has been developed in the West, the wealth that has been developed in the West, is simply taken without anybody paying for that, nobody paying anything to those countries for that, just taking it off to another country where it can be utilized for the globalists to make a lot more money. So they have used all of these things and many more in order to become even more wealthy. This, of course, has brought about this popular nationalist backlash. Brexit, Trump, and this whole wave now of nationalism, it's all because of these excesses of globalism. So what is going to happen now that there seems to be this rise of nationalism coming along? Well, here's what you can expect. The nationalists are going to become the villains. That's what's going to happen. And once again, the thesis develops the antithesis, and then the synthesis will come out of that. So how do we move things beyond nationalism to the goals of the globalists? That's what some of them are thinking. Here we can be sure they'll turn to people like David Rockefeller, who has said all we need is the right major crisis and the nations will accept the New World Order. You see, if they put on enough pressure on the world and they can blame it on the nationalists, the world will turn the other way. And it will turn the other way with a vengeance. So already, as soon as this happened, a narrative has started to come forth. For instance, we see this article, Britain turns its back on Europe. Those Brits are traitors, aren't they? Immoral. They've turned their back on Europe. Isn't that what that's telling you? Is that what they were doing, turning their back on Europe? I don't think so. But that's the message they want to send. And what they really are doing is looking for more freedom, more control over their lives. But that's not what you read in the papers. In the papers, they've turned their back on Europe. And then we had this section in this article, key developments from the Brexit vote. They're all bad. They're all bad, okay? They lose their prime minister, David Cameron. What a nice guy he is, too. Huh? There's likely to be another referendum in Scotland on whether they want to stay in the UK. So the UK is now going to break up because of this, we're told. Their money has already plunged to a 30-year low. That has happened. The stock market had huge sell-offs almost immediately from this Brexit vote. Banks have been affected. And the EU, unhappy with this vote, is saying, get out. And of course, we have other countries now that are thinking about following suit. And this too is seen as something bad that these evil Brits did by voting against staying in the EU. The EU Parliament leader, he says, we want Britain out as soon as possible. Now realize Britain has been the number 2 economy in the EU. They have invested billions of dollars, the equivalent of billions of dollars, into the European Union, and they are going to continue to be paying that, even though they had this vote. But despite everything that they've done for the EU is saying, get the heck out of here. We don't want you here. And here's what the EU Parliament leader said. The EU is the world's biggest single market, and Britain has just cut its ties with that market. That'll have consequences, and I don't believe other countries will be encouraged to follow that dangerous path. What is he saying? He's saying, we're going to punish Britain. And we're going to punish Britain so bad that no other country is going to want to do what Britain has done. Do you think that's just idle talk? I don't think it is. Then we read articles like this. Brexit. Is this like the 2008 financial crisis? You know, a financial crisis has been looming. It is inevitable. We've talked about that too. I've shown you the facts. And this has just been waiting. Now the globalists can pin it on the nationalists instead of taking responsibility for the fact they caused it. So all of this financial trouble that is about to fall on the world has started falling on the world. It's all going to be blamed on the nationalists. It's not just in Britain. In the US, stocks immediately started dropping. And we're told the UK is on the brink of a recession because of this vote. In the UK, they've been writing about the consequences of what's going to happen. And we're told that many people in the UK that read this are shocked that all of these results are going to happen. Now, we've already seen the vote won by less than 5%. Do you think all of this negativity that has been coming out already, that's going to be backed up with actions by the globalists, can move public opinion 5%? Do you think they could move it a lot more than 5%? So, really, this nationalist move is not very solid, is it? And when things move the other way, what happens then? The next time someone wants to make a nationalist move, what do all their friends tell them? Well, we tried that and it failed. And it kills the whole thing before it even gets started. That's very, very possible to happen. Here in the United States, we have the matter of Donald Trump and everything that he is promising to do for the country, promoting nationalism. His opponent says Trump would drive the U.S. economy into a recession. What do you think the globalists have in mind, friends? It's very possible what they're thinking is, if these nationalists don't back off, we're going to bring the world into a recession. That's very likely what you're going to see happen in order to put pressure on the people to conform to the globalist ideals. Now, while you're getting these scare tactics and threats, you're also getting something else. The New York Post, power to the people. Well, this is not celebrating the nationalist resurgence, even though it looks like it on the cover. Looks like that on the cover, so you pick up the magazine and read it. When you actually get inside it, once again, it's a gloomy picture for Brexit. And what they're saying is, okay, you can avoid all of these bad consequences. What we could do here is reform globalism, reform the EU with something called reformed globalization. What you're looking at is the Hegelian dialectic, right? Globalism, they call it protectionism here. It's nationalism, right? They have changed it. It's protectionism. So, globalism, protectionism, and now the synthesis, reformed globalism. Gee, we didn't understand we were hurting all you people so bad. Let us just fix it and everything will be fine. Here's a good example, George Soros. Globalist billionaire. This is what he said. Admittedly, the EU is a flawed construction. They just figured that out now. Okay? You know, a week ago, George Soros would not say that about the EU, at least publicly. Now he's saying that. And then he says, after Brexit, all of us who believe in the values and principles that the EU is designed to uphold must band together to save it by thoroughly reconstructing it. We're going to fix all the bad stuff in the EU. That's what we're going to do. We're going to make it better. All those things that were bothering all you people, don't worry about that now. We're going to fix all those things. He says, I'm convinced that as the consequences of Brexit unfold in the weeks and months ahead, more and more people will join us. Is that not a veiled threat? He's saying, we're going to punish you for leaving the EU, and you're going to change your mind. You're going to think, like I think, that simply restructuring the EU is really what we need to do. That's what he's saying. I think that pretty well represents the mindset of the globalists. Now, you might think it's too late because they already had the Brexit vote. However, the same day or the next day, people came out, influential figures in the UK, saying, we need a second referendum. In fact, over 1 million people have already signed on for a second referendum. Where is that all going to go? Well, we don't know for sure, but I can tell you where it's not going to go. The world is not now going to swing back over to nationalism. You know, you have all these people celebrating that. They think that's what's going to happen. That's not what's going to happen. Because the nationalists are not the ones that control the world's wealth. They are not the ones that have the real power. It's the globalists that do. And they know how to use the carrot and the stick. They've been using it for a very long time. As you can see, they're already out there with their carrot, with their stick. They're beating on all the nationalists while they're holding out the carrot in front of them. You'll get that and we'll stop beating you if you just do what we tell you. That's where it's all going. And it's very predictable that this method is going to get the people back in line. How long will that take? Maybe not long, maybe longer than we might think. But Either way, it will happen. They will get the world back in line with the globalist agenda. And if the nationalists aren't malleable enough, then it could be a painful time coming up for everybody. Just so the whole world will blame those nationalists and they'll change their mind about things and get back in line with the globalists. Because remember, all the nations of the world signed on to Agenda 2030 with the United Nations. They have already committed, including Britain, by the way. The fact they have backed out of the EU doesn't change the fact they have signed Agenda 2030, which gives the United Nations control over all the world's resources by 2030. In other words, a global government. That's not undone at all. And what about all the rest of the gains that globalists have made over the last decade or so? What about the social changes that have happened? Do the nationalists really even care about that? For instance, here in America, do you think Donald Trump is going to roll back same-sex marriage? How about abortion? Is he going to roll that back? I don't think so. See, a great deal that the globalists have accomplished already is pretty well set in stone at this point, and it's not going to be undone. So, the net effect of all of this is that it is actually moving the globalist agenda forward. There was bound to be pushback against the globalists. They knew that would happen at some point. You can be sure they were ready for that. And now that it's happened, they're going to deal with it. And when they get done with dealing with it, where are we going to be at? We're going to be at the place where the world is ready for global government. That's ahead of us. This has brought us closer to that goal. That battle can be fought, and then the world will be brought to that place of global government. We know from Scripture, global government is coming. The beast is rising out of the sea. Revelation 13 tells us he's given authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation. What is that? Global government. All who dwell on the earth will worship him. What is that? Global government. This is something that must happen, and really, we're getting closer than ever to that happening. But I want to remind you, this is the part I like. You know, the truth is, globalism cannot deal with the world's problems. It cannot do all the things it promises. It cannot do away with poverty. It cannot certainly do away with sickness or death. And what about nationalism? Well, in the name of nationalism, governments of the earth have murdered millions of their own people. You know, this is the history of nationalism. And what about wars? World War I, World War II, wasn't that all about nationalism? Nationalism is no answer to the world's problems either. The kingdom is the answer. The kingdom is the only answer. And after we get past globalism, this is what happens. The Son of Man comes with the clouds of heaven. He's given dominion, glory, and the kingdom that all the peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. He gets to say what the final answer actually is. The Hegelian dialectic will be over because it's actually Yeshua Messiah that trumps both nationalism and globalism. This is the future. So you know what? this is what we're signed up for here. And I have to tell you the truth. I have some sympathy for the nationalists. They're hurting, as we all are, from what the globalists have done. And the truth about them, though, is they don't know the real answer. Many of them would get on board with us if they really understood that nationalism is not the answer either. I think the better we understand what is really going on, and we see this for what this is really all about, that this is the movement of the Hegelian dialectic. It's the globalists moving society closer to globalism. If they can understand that as we can understand that, then we can realize throwing ourselves behind nationalism is not going to bring us to the place that any of us want to be. Where we're at right now, we have a golden opportunity right now because the world is so caught up with these issues, they really don't care a great deal about us. And it leaves us free. You know, it leaves us free to do the work of our Father. It leaves us free to put forth the truth about the kingdom. It leaves us free to fish out whoever will come and be saved from this crooked generation. So really, when I look at all of this, I see an opportunity here for us. And let's make the most of this opportunity. Friends, do everything you can, because when we get past this whole discussion in the world, when we finally get under the globalism that's coming, the world is going to turn into an absolute living hell. Now, we have lots of problems right now in the world, but what we're going to look at that time is beyond the imagination. It's going to be literally the worst time that has ever occurred in human history. And people are so going to need to know what the truth is when that happens. We have an opportunity to tell them about that now, to help them to respond now, to find the remnant now. It's not nationalism, it's not globalism, it's the kingdom. We need to let the world know that is the answer. The global economy is teetering. World affairs are in a shambles. Unprecedented changes are in the works. The biblical signs of the last days are indeed upon us, meaning that global disaster is imminent. Yet, escape is possible. That's what this Remnant Exodus seminar is all about. Escape. Explaining the threat. Exposing the lies. And pointing out the only way of escape from the impending doom. This Remnant Exodus seminar includes 7 power-packed video presentations, each one about an hour to an hour and a half in length. These presentations are based on the scriptures, both Old Testament and New Testament, on current events, and on documented history. Each video builds on those before it. The Remnant Exodus seminar is designed to easily go through this information step by step with slides and illustrations to guide you each step of the way. Prepare for assumptions of the past to be challenged, giving you important new information to help guide your way. There are no gimmicks here, no manipulation, no lies. We know that your life is literally on the line. So documentation is provided for the facts in this presentation for you to check out for yourself. Consider all of the evidence, and then you be the judge. Here is a short outline of what's included in these videos. The first video is entitled Escape the Mark. The mark of the beast of Revelation is coming. You need to escape before that happens. Video 2 is entitled The War on Cash. We're quickly moving toward a cashless world. This will bring in the mark. Video number 3 is entitled No Rapture, No Escape. The pre-trib rapture is a fatally flawed doctrine based on assumptions that do not agree with the facts of history. Find out how the facts about the early believers change everything you may have been told. A pre-trib rapture does not offer a way of escape. I would add that the history that is presented in this particular video is absolutely eye-opening and an entirely different paradigm than what you have ever heard. Video number 4 is entitled The Great Judaic Schism. The influence of rabbinical Judaism on the world has been far-reaching, more far-reaching, in fact, than most of us realize. Revisiting the history of first-century Judaic sects is eye-opening for Jews, Christians, and Messianics, since all three groups are directly affected by this information. Video 5 is entitled The Christian Church Did Not Exist Before 135 AD. Yes, for hundreds of years, Christians have been told that the Christian church began at Pentecost, as allegedly reported in the book of Acts. Yet, based on easily proven facts, many Christian scholars know this is not true. The Christian church did not exist before 135 AD, a fact with huge ramifications when looking for a way of escape. Video 6 is entitled Into Babylon. History clearly shows that both rabbinical Judaism and Christianity started on the path into Babylon in the 2nd century AD. This has set up people from both of these groups for disaster when Babylon the Great of Revelation 17 and 18 soon meets its end. Yes, this is a shocking claim. That's why you need to take in this seminar. The final video, video number 7, is entitled Remnant Exodus. The remnant is one of the most well-established teachings of Scripture, yet probably is also the most neglected. Here you will learn who the remnant are and how the remnant exodus offers the only way of escape. Perhaps most importantly, it will finally become clear how you can escape as part of this group. A seminar of this depth on any topic could normally cost you thousands. Yet, we are offering you the entire seminar from our website at absolutely no cost. All we ask is that you prayerfully, carefully, and systematically consider the entire seminar, and only after you have done that, make your judgment about it. In closing, realize that there are powerful enemies to the truths presented in this seminar, so we can't promise how long this free Remnant Exodus seminar will be here. We urge you to sign up for this Remnant Exodus seminar immediately while it is still available. That's what we've got. See you on the other side.
blameless in God's eyes, working for a prize that was to come. Then an evil ruler raised his hand against the throne of heaven, striking down children of the King. Why were they of consequence at all? Or maybe he was threatened by the silence of their battle cry. How long, oh Lord? How long, oh Lord, till you avenge the blood of those who died for your name's sake? They gave their lives, obeying your commands. How long, oh Lord? How long till you avenge the ones who prove their love to the one who did not sin, whose blood was shed? The price the law demands for the sinner